Good afternoon, friends. Gord's Poetry Show, The Midsummer Surprise, Part 2. And apologies for the sudden break in transmission. I think the memory was exhausted, or something technical like that. We're in the middle of Robert Herrick, died in 1674. And, but you know, very contemporary in his own way. Delight in disorder. A sweet disorder in the dress kindles in clothes a wantonness, a lawn about the shoulders thrown into a fine distraction, an erring lace which here and there enthralls the crimson stomacher, a cuff neglectful, and thereby ribbons to flow confusedly, a winning wave deserving note in the tempestuous petticoat, a careless shoestring in whose tie I see a wild civility, do more bewitch me than when art is too precise in every part. To the Dearborn, a rude river in Devon, by which sometimes he lived. Dearborn, farewell. I never look to see Dean or thy warty incivility. Thy rocky bottom that doth tear thy streams, and make them frantic, even to all extremes. To my content I never should behold, were thy streams silver, or thy rocks all gold. Rocky thou art, and rocky we discover thy men, and rocky are thy waves all over. O men, O manners, now and ever known to be a rocky generation, a people currish, curdlish as the seas, and rude almost as rudest salvages, with whom I did and may re-sojourn when rocks turn to rivers and rivers turn to men. Very metaphysical, that. Rivers turning into men. You might almost think he'd been reading some theosophy. Is the sun in my eyes? I don't know, I can't tell. It's sort of maybe. Here's something I was going to get to the last time. The Best Canadian Poetry 2016. We've read from this series before. Comes out every year, not surprisingly. And series editors are Molly Peacock and Anita Lahaye. And the guest editor is Helen Humphreys. And I'll be a bit of an editor too, because there's a lot of good poems in here. And obviously I have to select some. And it's not easy, believe me. All these poems are selected from various print and online magazines. And this one is selected from something called the Rusty Toque. Just a marvelously Canadian name, I think. Julie Bruck, we've read from her before. Fine poet. Flipped. The Laurentian home my parents built in 1957 became too much for my mother. Alone in her 80s, she retreated its sale like the placement of a beloved pet. She wouldn't trust just anyone. Realtors grew testy as she spurned offers from people with plans, buyers with improvements in mind. Years until she approved the couple from Ottawa, who lived there for a month, told neighbors they didn't like the view. The house sat empty, drooped with Christmas lights through 2 Julys. My mother lost touch. They tore the house down. On Google Earth, its replacement could shelter a cult with 2 swimming pools and a taste for contemporary elegance, open concept, lounge bar, wine cellar, grotto. With a 4-car garage and paving that begins at the new security gates, pressing back the pines and birches like unruly demonstrators, only the clouds look familiar. The property is listed as a single-family home. We thought her mother crazy, trying to control the house's future when her own life was slipping from her grasp. Now I tear through albums and boxes of old photos, finding none of the place we called the Red Door. Not snow-capped in winter, not thronged with wildflowers. The wildflowers she receded by the fistful each spring. That riot, their chaos, which she loved. No sign of how we lived. Mornings in her city apartment, my mother struggles at her walker. Someone beside her, another behind. Her heels don't touch the floor, and it takes a desperate dancing to stay up on the balls of her thin, confused feet. Suppose that couple had loved her house as she did, had known how light crossed its rooms differently in each season, or conversed with those red-eyed night visitors who peered through the screen doors. Could my mother's wiring have also endured? A child's wish. But the house was her memory. She needed it well tended, even after she'd walked away. A mind wants a place to return to. To imagine the next part of the journey requires at least one small dachshund, black as an olive, asleep at the center of the sunny rug since 1957. A cold drink sweating beside my father's chair. And I guess with the aging boomer generation, of which I'm a latecomer and only sort of slightly aging, we're going to get more of these younger folks reminiscing and regretfully loving their older departing, family travelers, departing family travelers. Here's a poem Lynn Crosbie published in the Walrus, Modestine. We have each tried to read to him with no success, except for James, who read him all of Robert Louis Stevenson's Travels with a Donkey in the Cevennes. I was there in the first of the long-term care centers when he finished the story, and we all shared the narrator's sadness about giving up his donkey. Not having realized that he loved her, unable to retrieve her, I was lying beside him, listening to the sounds of small, solid hooves and a tin bell, my father's good breathing, the kinds of sounds that strike like hammers later on in life. He was better then. My phone reminder, "Call Dad," still appears each night at 8, but there are no phones where he is now, no nurses to plead with to let me speak to him. And anyway, he will have been asleep for hours. We talked every night for 2 months. Then less, and now I wait until my mother, sister, or brother is there, and have short, stilted talks that end in either in tears or furious impatience. He has stopped talking about his cat or his own bed and asks some questions over and over while swerving in and out of sense. The donkey's feelings are not evoked in the book. Our author also thrashed the abused creature, and God only knows how she fared with her new owner. Inside of her is the baby she was, learning to stand, then endure, enduring all. "Please let me go home," my father said out of the blue not too long ago. "I'll be quiet, I won't bother anyone." "Please," he said, again, but so quietly, having been beaten down, having seen nothing but the dark, interminable road ahead, diminish into a short path, governed by certainties that fly right past him, by grace itself, by its absence and outrage. Outrage, that's a bit, Rage Against the Dying of the Light. I find a lot of authors, poets will quote that, in reference, not quote, but, refer to it. For me, it's quite a different story. But, that's me. There are no phones where he is now, but there is telepathy. But certainly the sadness and tragedy of dementia is too much to bear. I've been through it myself a few times, and it's not pleasant. It's not even unpleasant. It's way past unpleasant. Here's a nifty one from Jason Heroux, which he published in a magazine called Branch. Allowance. After I finished my chores, I was given a raindrop to spend in the woods. I was given a shadow to spend in the light, a hook to spend in the fish, a tank to spend in the war, a bird to spend in the cage, a shiver to spend in the wind. A shiver to spend in the wind. I do like that. Isn't poetry wonderful? I mean, you're going to see that in a Toronto Star today, a shiver to spend in the wind? No, you're not. Are you going to hear it come out of the mouth of any politician anywhere? No, you're not. Unless they're quoting Borges or something. And what's the chances of them doing that? When was the last time Vladimir Putin quoted Jean-Louis Borges? Or James Joyce? They might have quoted Mayakovsky, I guess. Kate Kennedy, from a poem she published in the Fiddlehead, called Late Changes in the Homescape. The dog, a whole summer spent variously announcing his age, in chronic pant and geezer snore, wild. Blind blunders off porch and stare days ensnared by sprinkler, night by wily phone cord. The barn, once our dodgy gymnasium, hay shoot luge, short but deadly steep. Chicken house leap, similarly wicked. Dad's little workshop off the back, and upstairs the growing stacks of sleepy, broken things. At times tethered to one's undone. The barn hulking in sight of a dozen newer distractions. The dog pushed from lap, now quietly panting at the garden. Utterly baffled, forever game. John Terpstra. We've had his pleasure of his company on Poetry Show before. Was it from his book about trees? I think it was. But you know, I am getting a bit old and duffer myself, so I could be wrong. Here's a poem he published in the magazine Grain, Vocation. I can see myself lying on my stomach on the mattress, beneath a sloped bedroom ceiling, listening to the radio all summer because I had nothing else to do. Because I had nothing else to do but lie in my bed and listen to the radio for what seemed like the entire summer vacation. I developed a comprehensive knowledge of top 40 radio hit songs. Much of that 3-minute music was forgettable, although I have not forgotten it. In between were songs that made the wait worthwhile, and they all shared in that free articulation of feeling. The free articulation of feeling. How did they do it? I thought I was bored and I had nothing to do. Meanwhile, the guardian angel of my psyche kept me pinned to the mattress, mindless and rapt. Now, I'm not quite sure how old John Terpstra is. If he's I'm sure he's middle-aged or older, but is he remembering the 70s or the 60s? I certainly, as a teenager, remember the 60s, and what he says is exactly true. In between were songs that made the wait worthwhile. Certainly, the wait was worthwhile. If you could hear The Yardbirds, Happenings 10 Years' Time Ago, or Shapes of Things. Or Spencer Davis Group, I'm a Man. Or the Byrds, Chimes of Freedom. The list goes on and on. I'm sure some guardian angel on my side was overlooking my listening habits, because I can just about sing those songs today. As I say, lots of good poems in this book. The Best Canadian Poetry, 2016. Run right out and buy it now. The 2017 one's probably coming out fairly soon. Now, from one anthology to another. This one's from a few years ago, edited by Stuart Ross, published by the Mercury Press, what I believe is no more. Well, I could be wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. Surreal Estate. All kinds of surrealism. Just bucket loads of it. Lawrence Weisberg, Swallowing His Tongue. This is by Beatrix Hausner. When he met us at the square, smoke rose from his shoes, floated in the air like a song suspended. He treaded the beaded lining of the ground. He claimed he came alone, though we knew that he walked alongside the nurse from outer space, visible only when he opened his immense chest of treasures. He carried fire inside him, burning deep, and wound tightly like a fist pounding at the growing silence of this age. He pulled his tongue inward, stretching the limits of endurance, suffering the song as it imploded with his heart. Here was a lion whose pelt was lined with sunbird feathers, big cat accustomed to hanging from lamps in the first house where he lived with his sister, priestess of the dance, and magic animals that shine in the night. As opposed to pre-selecting as I did with that, I'm improvising here, just opening the pages at random. Isn't that daring? Oh, that's the middle of a poem. Can't do that. That's not fair. Images After Leaves by Daniel F. Bradley, who I believe has gone on to his great reward in the sky. And I hope he's enjoying himself. I sort of remember when he was sort of slightly well known in Toronto. Poems and short stories and whatnot. But he decided he'd had enough and moved on. Images After Leaves. The tongue slips, the last air pissing out. Sometimes we all make sentences with meaning, defined and full of content, and the rest is broken scrap. And wait, echoes wait, and it is as if we carry all our misspellings in our chest, so full and heavy to feel the ground mistabs, armor, the snappy comebacks, and vicious circle. Go to the Corner by Daniel F. Bradley. Count the next 10 people to walk by. 10 single people wearing the same color jacket, blue. Count out 10 blue jackets and then wait for the very next person who has a plastic bag. Follow them. Gary Barwin, recent winner of the Stephen Leacock Award for humor, and his humorous novel, Yiddish for Pirates. But this is years ago, 2009, I think. Planting Consent. You were on the evening news. I carried the TV outside. buried it on a hill with a beautiful view. By spring, a small antenna sprouted in that place. Somewhere under the earth, clouds, blue sky, and the wing beats of birds. Nomad. A dove returns the wrinkled forehead of its master under its wing. Whatever it was, a casket of weeping birds, the old kindness, last ship of the ancient dead, whiplash from a bell, the moon does not recall, whatever it was. The sleepy ground, called only the mind, pale blossom behind the eyelids, everywhere should whisper in our footsteps. Lillian Necakov, or is it Necakov? 2F Avenue, Chicago, for Richard Huttle. He went and did it, unhinged himself, split the seam between his shoulder blades, sprouted wings, buried his cold soup in the garden, and blew one long, hard note on his imaginary saxophone. But you know what? I'm pretty sure I heard it all the way down by the pond. Some kind of Zen jazz. I didn't even notice the frozen faces in the ice below me as I skated to the notes, carried on a stolen wind. Lance Larocque. A name that is new to me, but, I'm not encyclopedic in my knowledge. I am partial to my favorites, but also partial to the unknown, like Lance. History is the exception. This present is this present. The other ones are sleeping, their eyes red with dreaming, or not. The others, imaginary skeletons deprived of bodies, writhing under the linoleum, the asphalt, the earth. Or not. I awaken to this. Most things are never born, but some things are born dead and ghost-like. They make their ways among the furniture, wandering on the brink of resignation and despair. A Nova Scotia love story. The black flies graze in clots along my arms and legs. Infinity. Just before the end of things, I saw them. Butterflies, butterflies, swarming, swarming, through the stomach of the world. History in the New World Order. We might at least lay down these mirrors on graves and release our visions. There's no longer a way to people the dead with the lives they deserve, again and again. They go out, unsmiling corpses. They are longing for organs and holes, fingernails and cigarettes. It is time. I need a mad, fierce flame here to pour over our machinery. It goes out. Duck Ponds of Berlin by Mark Laba. It was a long afternoon. Safety deposit boxes sat in armchairs and joked about the heat, perspiring like tourists cramming luggage into motel rooms. The air was so garbled it bubbled from its skin, and telepathy fell on the forearms of public figures, drizzling blood into well-worn slippers. Speaking about events, his wife found him dead at 1:30, although he appeared to be sweeping the steps, and with his left foot he imitated a starving frog. Nevertheless, they duplicated the story of a king who thought he was a clock, but was not. Lost in a conveyor belt of dangerous digestion, living constantly for the ominous bong of forceps striking the glockenspiel. Oh, I do like that. The ominous bong of forceps striking the glockenspiel. Nice one, Mark. Alice Burdick. We've certainly been entertained and informed by her poetry before. Halifax downtown, winter. The field for horses shines with new ice. They're not there, holding up their limbs and sweating under loose trees. Monster air. Monster drug ties his shoes and opens his big blues to watch us crowd the hill. The hill is so soft, and ladies don't know what to say. The air keeps my cat on top of old knowledge. Who needs the giant lady spider? Half her body inside, half her life gone. That's an interesting creek over there, isn't it? Ghastly parcel. Packed into the dull green truck, a package will be delivered. Ghastly parcel bought by the privileged few who won't view friends in sterile rooms. Sharp light and dilated eyes. Injured man is numb, can only describe his harmed friends. Orphan wants to see mother. His handsome back is hurt. He waits, broken, in the makeshift rest center. Bitter herbs, discreet bunch dipped in salt. An egg recalls birth to eat. Beauty is shielded from ugly truth. And so it should be. Stuart Ross, the editor of this particular volume, Surreal Estate. The sun after George Trockle. The sun wears the blue sky like a hospital gown. The deer are shadows among the trees. The man doesn't know whether to torture or nurture. The insects skid across the pond's surface. The earth expands and contracts. The boat is sleepy, but it is also hungry. Earthworms caress the corn's narrow roots. The great mouth of night stretches wide. A swan confronts a killer. The planets open their moist white eyes. The wanderer's legs are 100 and heavy. A flash of light tears a hole in the night. And also, Sueño Perdido, after Valerie Larbeau. Oh, endless grey clouds choking the sky, black moon, invisible stars, distant squeal of tires beneath the shell of a car with a tree growing through it. Oh, various trembling monsters that lurch through cold empty cellars, and whose scribbled claws swipe from beneath my bed, who await me in places I'll never go. Oh, constant clatter of locomotives through my chest, tiny trembling pigeon lodged in my bowels, ill-formed kernels of love glittering in the back of my throat, in my shoulders, in the palms of my hands. Oh, vivid memories of decades before my birth, of all the pain I've caused, and the pain for which I bear no blame, the peaceful dreams of those dear to me, the misspellings on eroded headstones shrouded in mist. Oh, chaos, exhaustion, bliss, confusion, serenity, blankness, panic, quiet, quiet. Oh, endless roaring clouds rolling over my head. I offer you this, my lost sleep. Surreal Estate. Great little collection of surrealistic poems. Sorry, 2004. I thought it was a bit later than that. Oh boy, that's really old, eh? That's not quite as old as Robert Herrick, though. And Dwellers in Eternity, as are all poets. Reading endlessly and verbalizing stanzas more beautiful than clouds, more effervescent than, I don't know, bubbles in Coca-Cola, I guess. What else? More beautiful than journalism, more scintillating than political speeches, more rhythmic than the average conversation. You know, I could go on, and I usually do. But that's my apology and my karmic retribution for letting part one go all to heck. And I hope you'll find it in your hearts to forgive me. And onwards to the next poetry show. And as it's summer, I'm sure there'll be another one fairly soon. And we'll see what swims into the snug harbour of Gord's Poetry Show, unbidden and unanticipated. And until then, so long, my poetic effusions of human life.